You need to give up comfort and security and really follow God. Now think of this. He's 75 years old at this point of the story. He's already been relocated once in his life, and he's settled into a good position. He's got a household. He's got a great business. He has livestock. He was probably a very rich man at this point of his life. Things have gone well for him, and at age 75, it's retirement. Let's not go shake it up now. Let's just take the rest of our life and enjoy the city of Haran and everything that we have here. And God says, I'm going to make you famous, but you have to give up everything that you think is cush and safe and comfortable. That's pretty big and bold, isn't it? To say, come, follow me, and just abandon it all. It sounds really cool, but part of it is Abram must have been a forward-thinking guy. Because the only way you can do this is if you believe the promise is greater than the present. That God's calling me into something, He's not telling me what it is. It's just this ambiguous thing to come follow me to an unknown land. He won't even tell me where I'm really going. But there's something greater at the end. The promise is greater than what I'm experiencing now. So a forward-thinking person says, I'm going to follow and see where God's going to take me. Are you a forward-thinking person? I mean, do you really believe that God's got something greater than the existence you have now? Or are we so focused on now? Because throughout history, God's done this time and time again. In the New Testament, God comes in human form, and Jesus walks among us, and He walks up to fishermen. He walks up to tax collectors that have their job. He walks up to rebels against the Roman Empire. And He calls them in and says, come follow me. I will make you fishers of men. And we know these names throughout history. Matthew, Mark, Nathaniel, Thomas, Peter. Those names have been etched in our lives forever because they went from what they were to something famous and amazing for the kingdom of God. God did something on their adventure. He still does that today. He still is calling men and women to do this day. And you need to understand that if you're going to jump in, if you're going to say, I'm having the encounter, I'm hearing the call, I want to go, it sounds cool, you need to fully embrace the adventurous life. I mean, fully embrace the adventurous life. Not just halfway. Many of us will say, okay, it sounds cool, it sounds great, I'm willing to do it on my terms. I like being in control of my life. It doesn't work that way when you do this. And it's not going to be a straight line with God. Look at how Abraham's life begins. He's in Ur, way on the south point. Dad relocates him. Let's go up to the north country. Yeah. He spent 75 years. Great times there. Up there he has a spiritual encounter with God. He moves from this other religious faith to a new place with the living God. And God calls him into the adventure. So what happens? The adventure begins. From Haran through Canaan to Shechem. Down to Bethel. Beersheba. Eventually he moves over to Egypt for a while. He comes back. It's not in a straight line at all. He's up and down all over the place, and in that age 75 when he begins this. So you have to be all in with this. You can't go griping and grumbling when you go on a journey like this. Oh, why doesn't God do it my way? You know, I would have gone in a straight line. Because if I'm over here in Ur, I could go right across from Beersheba. That's a lot straighter than north, south, east, and darting all over the place. That's how we do it. See, God's more interested in building our character to making life easy for us. He's far more interested in developing you, growing you, building you as a person of high character that will follow in spite of the situation. So you have to decide if you're going to jump in, all in. You have to decide, I'm not going to gripe and complain. He's leading, I'm following. I'm going to suck the highs with the low. I'm going to see where He takes me. And I've lived in this life myself. My father, and I used to not really like my dad, honestly, growing up. He was not on the highest, wow, he's a great guy. I had the highest respect for my dad. I sometimes surprise myself at how highly I think of him now. At about age 35, he had his experience with God that forever changed him from a lawyer, from a judge, from a professional legal person, and he moved everything, including his family. We started in Elkhart, Indiana, flatland Midwest. All right? It was just an average great life. That, we were middle class and life was going good. The Bontrager name was well known, and God and Dad meet and raises the conversation and the relationship and says, you need to go to Minneapolis, Minnesota. And so my mom and dad come to Minneapolis and check out this new ministry thing that's beginning to happen. And Dad's never worked in a ministry ever in his life. And they wanted to be the executive director for it. Oh, but we don't have a paycheck, but come anyway, but we're going to make you the executive director. So they go there in June, and my mom is in the backyard of the house we eventually bought, and there's a snowbank still there in June. We're not moving, honey. I'm not going there. No. So they moved anyways, and they went. From there, after my brother and I graduated from high school, and we both moved out of the house eventually, they moved to the far corner of Colorado. They built a house in the middle of nowhere. And that's where they lived, and they enjoyed it, and their ministry continued to grow and flourish. And then they got this desire to do overseas mission. And you have to understand, for those of you that know me, I'm my dad. It's hamburgers, it's pizza, a cool drink, and Cheetos. They don't have it overseas. But they got this desire to go overseas and serve God because they went to the former Soviet Union. The door opened up for ministries to go in there and help people. So they start off in Belarus, in Minsk. Because their legal system had collapsed so far, they opened up this opportunity to have professionals come in and teach law and ethics. And my dad said, fine, I'll do it. But we're going to use the Bible as our template. We're going to talk about morals and God values to help you rebuild because your system didn't work. And they said, great. So they actually wanted biblical practices being taught in a law school in the former Soviet Union. How crazy is that? From there, they begin to move, and then they end up in Moscow. My dad taught in a Moscow university. From Flatland, Indiana to Moscow. Eventually, they land in Kazakhstan, where they've been serving. My mom and dad love being overseas more than they love being in the home in Colorado they built. They love meeting international people. My mom goes to the marketplace and hangs out with all the ladies with their big cold. It's colder there than it is here. And she loves it. So you have to embrace God's call and adventure, or that's not possible. You cannot go kicking and screaming and complaining the whole way and enjoy it. You have to be forward thinking and believe that what He's called me is going to be something amazing. That's going to be worth all of this, all the way through this. This was the beginning template of what discipleship became, what Jesus used, what the Apostle Paul used. It's all throughout the Bible. When you jump in, you go all in, or don't go. But there's something else that he did. It's vital to being a person that goes all in. I mean, it's one thing to say, I'm going to go. It's one thing to say, okay, I'm not going to complain, I'm going to go. But there's a crucial part that makes this all more possible. Look at verses 7 and 9 again. Then the Lord appeared to Abram and said, I will give this land to your descendants. This is not even his land. This is for somebody else. This is just a setup. And Abram built an altar there and dedicated it to the Lord who had appeared to him. After that, Abram traveled south and set up a camp in the hill country with Bethel to the west and Ai to the east. Then he built another altar and dedicated it to the Lord, and he worshipped the Lord. Then Abram continued traveling south by stages through the Negev.